Welcome to the President's Forum podcast. I'm Wesley Smith, the Executive Director of the President's Forum, and your host today. I'll have a conversation with Dr. Madeline Pumariega, who's the president of Miami-Dade College, where a remarkable 98% of students graduate debt-free. Our conversation, very interesting, and that's not a mistake. Only 2% of students at Miami-Dade take any kind of debt on and have debt at graduation. So let's get straight to that conversation. Madeline, welcome to the President's Forum podcast today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me again.
Hey, we're really excited to hear what you have going on down in Miami. And I know that you have some interesting stuff. I'm going to start us with the most interesting stat. We're talking affordability during the month of December. And we have this stat from your institution that we'd love for you to explain. It's pretty extraordinary. It is that 98% of graduates complete their education debt-free at Miami-Dade College. How do you do that?
So I think a couple of ways, right? One is, how do you stay affordable? And if you look at Miami-Dade College, we've looked at efficiency. We've looked at making sure that we stay affordable. We haven't raised tuition in the last 12 years at Miami-Dade College. So that it starts there, the affordability piece to it. I think the second aspect is how we invest in scholarships and making sure that we leverage and we're able to get students scholarship, and aid that they need. 70% of our students come from low income homes. About 60% are first in their families to go to college. And of the 125,000 students that we served last academic year, about 1,800 took on any loans whatsoever. And when we look at their academic progress, they are making sound academic progress towards completing their degree. And so I think it is a multi-pronged strategy, but it's something we're incredibly proud of.
Did you say that 70% of your students come from low-income backgrounds?
That's correct.
So you create 98% debt-free graduation with 70% coming from households that don't have excess dollars to spend on education. That's pretty remarkable.
That is correct. And I think it's really sits at our mission, right? As Democracy's College, we really believe in providing opportunity for students, and providing opportunities to the American dream through the power of education has to also come alongside not taking on debt that straddles you in buying your first home and trying to really leverage the additional earnings that you make from getting your education, not that you're in a repayment plan for the rest of your life.
Right. Okay, so what you said initially makes a ton of sense. That is, you can't do this without an affordable institution in the first place. You have to keep costs really low. In your experience, what are some of the ways that Miami-Dade College has focused on the cost of tuition, fees, other costs to keep them low? What have you done? What have you looked at to change, and what are you looking at changing in the future?
Value and efficiency, right? So if you know you're not going to raise tuition, if you know you're not going to raise fees, then when you're sitting at the table, how do you redesign the student experience? How do you leverage technology in a better way? How do you make sure that we do cross-disciplinary support? How do we leverage our size and build in efficient ways to serve our students? If you're sitting at the table and you know that you can raise tuition by 10 or 12 or 20%, then it doesn't force you to have these conversations that really build capacity and advance our impact without it being passed on to the students.
So essentially, what you have is a situation where 2% of your students have found what I would assume are very legitimate reasons that they need to take out some student loans. The other 98% are figuring their way through without student loans. Do you work with them on the front end on providing information about how loans work and about repayment and what that will look like, and encouraging them to find ways to make this work as well. How do you work with the students on this?
I think it's starting early. As I said to you before, so many of our students are first in their families to go to college. So if you just think about our traditional high school students coming into college in the fall, it starts with our high schools. It starts having expos. It's the conversations with the CAP counselors. It's FAFSA days so that the parents can come in and you can explain, look, if you're in Florida and you've excelled academically, there's a program for you, which is Bright Futures. And if you get accepted to any one of our state universities or one of our state colleges, that's going to cover your tuition and fees. You're going to be able to have that covered through Bright Futures. And if you didn't, but you need some type of aid, there's going to be a Pell Grant that's going to help you. And that grant doesn't have to repay. You have to just stay in academically good standing. And then there's the middle, and the middle is always a great part, right? Because a couple of ways. One, we have to get them to see that college is a value for them, because many are, they've got to work while they study. And we know that. So then that's where we focus our scholarship dollars, whether it's American Dream, whether it's our Presidential Rising Scholars, the Future Ready Scholarship Program, and really harnessing what type of institutional aid we give and where we give it and to where we're going to have the greatest impact. And then as last resort, here's then a federal loan program, and then borrow responsibly, because it's not quick cash. It's cash that can have an impact on your credit scores and your credit power for the rest of your life. So if you're teaching a student how the value of education can bring them economic capital and social capital so that they can really have a path to prosperity, you also have to speak early and often about what a student loan can have in deterring that impact that economic capital can have.
So, Madeline, I want to wrap with this question. There are a lot of institutions that would be very envious of this debt-free graduation rate, and they'll want to replicate this, or they want best practices on what to do. We've talked through a few of them, but I want to give you the last word on if you are giving advice or counsel to other institutional leaders to keep the debt load on students low as possible. What would the advice be that you would give them? What's the first thing that you would do at a different institution if you were trying to replicate what you've done at Miami-Dade?
One is build a academic support and student support ecosystem that isn't built on the premise of more. If I only had more, our impact would be more. That isn't the case. More doesn't always lead to high impact. When you do that, then you start to really take a look at what are high impact practices and the value of those high impact practices. And then I think the third is look at your data. Your data will tell a story. What's the story it's telling? So you can advance impact and put together strategies that help students achieve that degree debt-free and make sure that you're driving that academic and student success as well.
Love it. Well, thank you for taking a few minutes of your day to give us some of these best practices. I'm sure that this series that we're doing with Presidents Forum presidents will be highly interesting to colleagues and others who are running institutions throughout the country, because affordability, we're at a crisis point. And if we don't solve this now, we're going to have even more problems with students saying, what's the value of higher education? So part of the equation, that cost part of the equation is huge. So thank you for your advice on that.
Thanks, Wes, for your leadership. I couldn't agree more with you. When 52% of Americans aren't sure on the value of higher education, it's going to be upon us, the leaders in higher education, to make sure that we do bring that value. And we know that in a knowledge economy, while AI is democratizing information, knowledge will be a premium, and we can be a vital role in that for our country.
Absolutely. Thanks, Madeline.
Thank you.